Hi guys, I'm super excited to do a video today with Mandi Lynn. She is here to join me. Yay! We're going to talk about why covers are so important, and we have a cover reveal. And I have to say really quick, you guys, in case I haven't said this before, Mandi designed the cover that we're going to reveal today.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited. Mandi, do you want to share a little bit about yourself quick?
I'm an author, a fellow author-tuber, book cover designer, and the creator of the book launch planner. But today we're talking all about cover design. So yeah.
I like that. We're going to talk about all the questions that you guys sent in from over on Instagram when I asked, like, what do you want to know about cover design, why they're important, and we just want to really dive deep into helping you understand how much your cover affects your sales and therefore your success as an author. People do judge books by their covers, unfortunately, and so because of that, your cover is going to directly affect your author income. And so we really want to talk about what goes into making a cover awesome. And we also have a part 2 on Mandi's channel that's going to come out tomorrow, where we actually like break it down for you, and she's going to show us in Photoshop all the details, like how you actually figure out and make a cover. But today we're going to answer your questions. But first, let's talk about how people actually judge book covers. The first way that we judge books is based on the genre / the other books that we read. If you look at your bookshelf, you're going to buy books that are very similar to the books on your shelf.
Absolutely. Because if you're into, say, dystopian, you kind of know what book covers are associated with dystopian books.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I have the perfect example for this. There is this story about an erotica novel that I heard once where the cover was a sword and there weren't any people on it. And so it kind of looked a lot like the Graceland cover. I'll flash that on the screen. And a lot of people who like fantasy picked this book up and were unpleasantly surprised because expecting erotica. And so that's just an example of how important it is to match your genre and what readers expect, because they did not get what they expected.
Yes, there's a reason erotica has half naked people on the covers.
Yes. And then the second way we judge covers is based on their quality and their professionalism. And so what we mean by this is if they look like they're thrown together on some website, or if you had a professional cover designer like Mandi design them for you, and you can tell the difference.
There's a lot of different things that go into design in general, but for cover design, one of the biggest things that when I first started that I kind of noticed set the bar between kind of an okay cover and an amazing cover is the fact that there's some sort of extra element to the text, whether that be it has a texture to it, it has fancy squirrels as an extension onto the text, or it's beveled. There's something going on with the text that makes the text stand out and makes the cover stand out.
And it's something that you can't like do as a non-designer without Photoshop. Like it's like I've seen so many self-published covers where the text looks like Times New Roman and it's like clearly it's like a very recognizable font, or they go too far the other way and they pick this totally unreadable font that's like swirls everywhere. The font really clarifies if it's done professionally or not. And so does how cluttered the cover is, which leads to the third judgment. If it's too cluttered, that screams non-professional.
Yeah, some people like to add little Easter eggs into their cover, and while that's nice to do, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. If you want to add in little Easter eggs that your readers can catch after they have read your book and they're like, oh my God, that's from this scene, you want to do it in a very clean and professional way. Otherwise, you just end up with a cover that's too messy. A lot of the times, if someone's new to designing, they try a little bit too hard and they add in extra stuff that's not needed, when really the magic of designing comes to simplicity sometimes.
Absolutely agree. And the reason that authors like to add in so many elements is usually based on accuracy. And readers do judge a book based on its accuracy after reading a little bit, but usually not as much as you think. Like in my dystopian novels, I have them, the silhouettes are clearly wearing like jeans. And anyway, it's not always as important as you think.
Well, even I can give the same example for my own book, I Am Mercy, that takes place during 14th century France. So the clothing during that time would be very different. But on the cover, the girl or woman is wearing a dress that would definitely not be for that time, but it fits the book so well and it fits the mood of the book so well. That's not something that a reader is going to be like, that's not accurate.
Exactly. It comes down to like what's going to make the cover sell is far more important than having every detail of the story and every single chapter displayed on the cover. Those are some of the don'ts, like things to watch out for. But then we wanted to talk about some do's. So number one, we kind of hit on this, is readable font. And one of the reasons is because of the thumbnail size, which we should hit on really quick. It's when you shrink a book down to the tiniest, and it's like a thumbnail on Amazon, for example, and the book has to be catching their attention in that tiny, tiny size, because if it's not, they might never click on it to see more.
Right. So basically what you want to do is you want to choose a font that's easily readable, and you also don't want to add in so many effects to the font that it becomes lost in the effects or it blends in too much with the background. You want to make sure that even in that small thumbnail size, they can more or less read it. You're not always going to be able to read every single piece of text on the cover, but you want the title of the book to be readable.
Exactly. The title is also a marketing tool. So if it's readable, that's huge.
You have a good book cover, it'll sell itself.
Exactly. And then we put this as a maybe do. We were talking about how the human element, it does depend on the genre, but certain genres, it can be extremely helpful to have any human element, whether it's the full character or like a foot or a crown.
But one of the things I mentioned is oftentimes in thriller novels, especially, they tend to do more objects rather than people, because just thriller novels, it's usually the lack of a person adds into that suspense.
Intrigue.
Yeah, exactly. But for more young adult novels, you'll see more people on the covers because you want to make it relatable and more human.
Which leads to our third do. Honestly, it all comes down to matching the genre. There's like nothing more important than this, I would say. We talk about this in Mandi's video, so I'm going to again say, click the link below. It'll be live tomorrow, so the link will be below for you to go watch it, where we literally show you how you can find genres and how you can actually make sure that your book is matching. So we're going to go to Instagram and my poll that I ran, where I asked you guys to ask questions about cover design, because I want to pull from, let me point the right way, pull from Mandi here as a cover designer. This is the perfect time to really hit home what's important about cover design. Julia Goodwin Writer says, at what stage do you look for a cover designer?
It really depends on how far out your cover designer is booked. If you have a cover designer that's like in high demand and they book out fast, you're going to want to book them sooner. But usually don't do it until you're actually starting the publishing process. So once you kind of have an idea of when you want your book to publish, then kind of work backwards to see when you need your cover readied by, and then see how much time your cover designer needs to actually design that cover. For me, it can take anywhere from 1 month to 3 months, depending on how many revisions are needed.
And I would also say I've had people on the other end, like, so Mandi's saying, like, don't wait till too late, because you might have to push out your release. But then on the flip side, don't do it too early. I know somebody who got their cover before they'd even written the book, like no first draft, nothing. And your book could change. It could change genres, which again, if you're making a cover to match your genre, that's going to be a big deal.
Some people like to have a cover design because they think that's going to like help them become inspired to write this story. But you could find out you don't even want to finish this manuscript, and now you bought this cover that you can't even use.
Yes. Don't waste your money. Like, make sure you're actually ready to buy it before you buy it. Agreed. Quirky Work says the importance of font, which we really did hit on well, but I love that she's bringing it up. It's legibility, genre standard. We didn't really talk about that. So many bad fonts ruining covers. There are genre standards, aren't there, for fonts?
Yes. So like the first one that comes to mind would be like your classic romance. They tend to have very swirly fonts, and then you have like a classic beach read, which is very like standard, almost Times New Roman fonts. It's kind of boring, but it's also the genre. And then you have stuff like fantasy, again with the swirls. Sci-fi and thrillers tend to have the more modern fonts, but you kind of just want to look at what other covers of your genre are doing.
Absolutely. And I love this. This was a big question because Timmy asked it too. What fonts are best for different genres? So definitely do your Amazon research, or even better, hire a cover designer who already knows. Like, I keep pointing the wrong way, like Mandi. Janine asks a question. What if you can't find a model that looks like your character? And Mandi and I have already filmed the video that is coming out tomorrow that I talked about, linked below. So we really touched on this a lot, but I thought it was worth mentioning here that if you can't find a model that looks like your character, your cover designer probably can make it work.
It's called Photoshop.
Yes. And so watch our video tomorrow if you want to see how Mandi did that, because we definitely didn't have a model that naturally was right.
Yeah, there was a lot of Photoshop involved, and once you guys watch the video, you'll understand just how much.
Wasn't it 116 layers?
Yes. Yeah. That's a lot of manipulation. That's actually not even counting the photoshopping that was done for the individual girl and the individual dress, because I did that in 2 different files because it was getting too much for my computer.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. And you guys, it's really fun to watch. I just have to say that. It was really fun. This is from you. Where did you find your amazing cover designer? Let's see. Oh, here's a good one that I think is really good to address. If our cover does not match the genre that well, like I found out with mine, should we still use it? I have thoughts, but I'll let you start.
I mean, that's tough because especially if you're in the situation with Bethany where you paid a lot for your first round of covers and now you have to pay a lot for your second round, then it's also going to be like, is it going to be worth it? Hopefully you realize that the cover doesn't match before you pay for the entire series to be designed. Like someone else I know. But, you know, it's just a matter of how much does it not match?
Yeah.
Is it looking like an entirely different genre? And do you think it'll be worth the investment?
That's such a good way to put it, because, okay, so it's like a 2-parter for me. Number one is, like, sometimes you just run into things. Like, I finally revealed this in my live stream recently, but 8 Little Pages went out of business. They're bankrupt. So that was actually the instigator to my decision. And so that's like a negative, but the positive is it led me to realize that my book wasn't quite on genre, so to speak. And I don't think I would have realized that if I hadn't been paying really close attention. And so if you realize it, you can ask yourself, like Mandi said, how much is it off genre? I could have stuck with what I had, and I think it would have been okay. But ultimately, like we said at the beginning, covers lead to sales. So if you're like watching your sales, that's your biggest indicator. Should I switch? Is your cover making money? Maybe you're okay for a while. Maybe you can rebrand in a year because covers change anyway, right?
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about the Lunar Chronicles changed their covers, and how long have those books been out? Sometimes you do it just to give the book a fresh breath. I did that with my books.
Yeah.
Hey, I am Mercy, and she, or Essence, and she's not here. The old covers seeing less sales. Let's give them a fresh breath.
Yes. Or like I did that with Evelyn's Number, where if you were like putting out a new book and it's been a while, you might be like, I want these to be more connected and I don't have the old designer to work with. I need the new designer to make them connected. Okay, here's a good one to ask Mandi. What is a good price to pay for a cover designer?
So before I started designing covers, I had paid someone $600 or $700 for my covers.
Yeah.
And that unfortunately is like a price that you can pay sometimes. I don't think I'd call that an outrageous price, but I think, you know, as an indie author, that's really expensive. But you also have to keep in mind, like, you get what you pay for. So if you're paying like someone to design a cover for $100, they probably aren't as experienced. So the way a graphic designer tends to price themselves is they price themselves depending on how in demand they are. So if a cover designer gets more experience, they're going to slowly start raising their prices because they're more experienced, they have more to show, and they're also more in demand. So the clients they want are the clients that are more willing to pay extra. So I personally, like, I price keeping in mind that I want to be budget friendly, but I also know my own worth. So you kind of just have to look at how much you're paying and also seeing what their portfolio is like, what experience they other clients had, because someone may have a gorgeous portfolio but be a terrible communicator, and that's like a huge thing. So you really just got to do your research before you book someone.
Yes, absolutely. Ask around even. Like I wish I had asked. Well, things can change, but I feel like if you ask how somebody else's experience was, that can give you a really good clue. If you look at how their cover turned out and if it's really on point, that can let you know this cover designer's talented. They know what they're doing. Usually cover designers have portfolios, right? Like you said.
Yeah.
I feel like we nailed that one. That one's good. Bonnie's Journey says, for beginners or new authors, the most economical way to make a cover, would it be Canva?
So you can, like, there is that option. They have a template in there, but Canva does not do nearly as much as what Photoshop can do. And even if you have Photoshop and you have the subscription to Adobe, there's like, I don't even know the full extent of Photoshop. Like, it's such an advanced program that I could use it every day for the rest of my life and probably never learn everything that's in there. So if you're a beginner, just find maybe either a beginner designer who's more within your budget, or maybe try learning it yourself. But just know, like, using programs like Canva, there's so much you can't do in Canva that I barely use Canva. I use it as a shortcut tool, but I can't stand it because I know what Photoshop is like.
And I do use Canva a lot, and I have made like really, really basic placeholder covers. Like if I needed to, I don't know, put something on Amazon before I was ready for the real cover reveal, for example, or maybe to order like a proof for myself before I'd ever hired a cover designer, but it's never the same quality. And you can tell, and I feel like we've hit home enough in this video already, that your cover is what sells your book. So you do not want readers to see a crappy cover, and you really do need professional covers. I really just want to say, like, if you're not selling it and you're doing it for yourself, Canva can work, but otherwise don't do that.
Even if like you're someone on Wattpad, people on Wattpad design their own covers all the time. I've also seen people on Wattpad hire people to design their covers, but whatever floats your boat.
You're not making money there, so I wouldn't.
Some people, I've seen people get picked up off of Wattpad to be published, like many, many authors. So I guess so.
Why not? Do different POD companies require different formats of the cover? KDP versus Ingram Spark, for example?
Yes, and I hate it. So KDP is pretty standard in what they require, and then Ingram Spark is very different because they print it in a more professional way. Not to say that KDP isn't, but as a graphic designer and as someone who's worked full-time as a graphic designer, the way you prepare files for print is very different than the way you prepare files for print for KDP. Like, if you looked at the ready-to-print file, Ingram Spark has a ton of white space with like a barcode and all that. Also, depending on your printing company, the thickness of the pages will vary. So the thickness of your spine will vary even if you have the same exact page count for each edition.
That part threw me so much. I was like, what? Why? The spine anyway.
The more you know.
The more you know, the more you're like, why am I doing this? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so Timmy asks, are there any genre-based colors that suit them best, or color tones maybe?
The only one that I can think of is like thrillers tend to be more darker, whereas like fantasies will be a little bit brighter unless it's like a dark fantasy. That's really the only pattern would be whether it would be light or dark, because otherwise you can kind of use whatever color. Like, you'll probably very rarely see pink on like a dark fiction,
right? Yeah,
accent, very like bright but small accent. But otherwise, you can kind of play around with colors. It's more just how light or dark the colors are going to be that you need to keep in mind.
That makes so much sense. Like your colors will almost match the mood of the book. How do you become a cover designer, not an author? Do you know any courses which will help ease into the industry?
Yeah, so that one, there's no like special certification. Like, there's no test you take and then all of a sudden you're a cover designer. Why people sometimes have a hard time finding a legit cover designer, because there can be people who can be self-proclaimed and be like, I know how to use Photoshop. Even like, I've never taken like a book cover designing course. I personally, when I was in college, took a ton of classes in graphic design, and one in particular, I had a composite photography assignment where I learned how to make, it's actually the photo that I use on my website, where it's a picture of me and I'm holding a rose and I'm wearing a dress that looks like a flower. And the whole assignment was to take this ethereal element and make it look real through, Photoshop. And that's of book cover design, because when you're dealing with fantasy, you're taking something that's obviously fake and you're trying to make it look as real as possible. So it's just a matter of taking classes in, whether it be composite photography or you just need to learn the basic elements of graphic design. There are some very key principles that you need to keep in mind, whether it be balance or contrast, colors, all these different things that you as a consumer don't think about. But when you're a designer, there are all these different things that you need to keep in mind. So it's really just taking as many classes as possible and just practicing, because you can take all the classes you want, but if you don't actually do it, you'll learn nothing.
Yeah, so true. I've heard recently that Skillshare has classes on using Photoshop, but even more specifically on how to use Photoshop for book design. I don't know if they have a lot of courses, but they have a couple, I've heard. And I'm sure YouTube also has some tutorials. And what do they call them? Fast.
Yeah, there's not so much, or at least from what I've just found on YouTube, there's not so much tutorials, but like the speed. Most people call it speed drawing, but you're not drawing, you're just not speed designing. I don't know, where you see someone make a cover and it's just a time lapse of it, and just watching how someone else works can be the most educational thing.
You learn so much from that. Yeah. Even just like, again, not to say it a billion times, but our video that's coming out tomorrow, you're going to see all the layers that go into it. And it just knowing it can help you make a better cover. But I will just add that graphic design is important, but I hired a graphic design friend to do my first cover, Evelyn's Number, and she didn't have the other elements. She didn't understand, and no shade to her because this wasn't her expertise, but you do need a designer who specifically understands books too. Like, you need the graphic design and you need the book knowledge, because it all does come down to matching the genre, like we talked about. And it all comes down to also, do they know how to do the wrap? Because like Mandi said, they're complicated. That wrap is different in different publishing on demand companies, and based on the page count and all these rules. I just think
you learn as you go.
Yeah, that's why I think it's so, like, if you want to learn it, awesome. But definitely like practice a lot. It takes
the first few book covers are not going to be great.
Yeah, it's so true. Just like with anything else, just like with our first couple chapters we write and our first editing experience and all that. So that's all the questions that I have from this particular Instagram poll. But I had another one where I asked you guys, what do you want to know about how to work with a cover designer? And Mandi is going to come back. I keep pointing out Mandi is going to come back on my channel for that as well in the next couple weeks, hopefully. And so just wanted to let you guys know that in case you want to subscribe, and hit the subscribe button below. And also don't forget to go and watch Mandi's video, also linked below, and go subscribe to her channel because her video is going to be awesome. It was really fun to make.
So get to reveal your cover.
Oh, thank you. I knew I would do this. And now it's time to finally reveal the cover. You guys ready for this? Drum roll. There it is. Isn't it beautiful and amazing? I'm so proud of it. Mandi, are you proud of it?
Oh, definitely. I mean, yes.
So I am just so excited with how it turned out and how amazing it looks next to the first cover in the series. If you guys didn't know, Mandi was busy, so I hired somebody on 99 Designs, and then I made her try to match that, which is like,
I love how you're like, I made her. I didn't give her a choice.
Well, she was wonderful enough to agree to do the second, third, and fourth books in the series. And so I seriously was like, this is really tough. And so just the fact that they're so seamless together, I'm going to flash it on the screen and show you guys how beautiful they look together. She made it match so seamlessly, and they're going to look beautiful next to each other on Amazon. And so now, just to give you guys a little heads up, Mandi's working on book 3, right?
Yes.
And just so you guys know, you might get to see a speed design of the cover of book 3 very soon. Obviously, I'll reveal it first, but then.
Yes, the goal is that for the most part, I'm hoping to record at least creating the first draft. I don't know if I'll record all the revisions because there might be a lot. But just kind of give you an idea of what kind of work and skill set goes into designing a fantasy cover.
Yes. And how many layers? I keep using that word layers. That's what it is, right? Photoshop layers.
Yes, just getting the model right is a whole thing within itself. And then getting the model to match everything else is like another project.
But we found the model, so I'm very excited about that.
You think we found the model.
I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but I do envision my characters and it's very hard. So like, Mandi, can I say this, that you gave me the freedom?
I gave you free range over a stock photo website.
Yes, Mandi let me just kind of explore, and she was like, if you find something calls to you, like send it to me, which is awesome because I feel like maybe it saved you time and me going, nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. You know? So, and it also made me really excited and invested. And when I found the right model, I was like, this is so, like, how would Mandi have known?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
So it made me so excited. But anyway.
Especially when you're an author who's like super particular. I think Bethany had a lot of fun searching the website and then being like, I found her. Will this work?
But really, it's like it all comes down to Mandi because the body doesn't work. So it's like,
I would almost never works. Usually the only thing that works is like the head and maybe an arm.
Yeah, so I'm so thankful that you know what to do. And I'm super excited for you guys to see it. So definitely subscribe. I know I already said it, but I'm just very excited for you to see it. So that's all we have for today. Thank you, Mandi, for joining me and for this fun chat about covers. If you guys like to give it a thumbs up, let me know your favorite thing that you learned today in the comments and what you want to know of cover design. If there's more stuff, I can pass it up to Mandi and maybe she can do future videos about your questions. Thank you guys for watching and have a great day. I'll talk to you later. Bye.